This country has an extraordinary and captivating history, and wherever you are in the British Isles, you're never too far away from somewhere that's going to remind you of this remarkable legacy. Now, much of it we already know. It's celebrated and loved, but there's still an awful lot more out there, and it's all waiting to be discovered. And today on Britain's Hidden Heritage, I'll be going behind the scenes at one of Britain's most extraordinary and least known about stately homes. A treasure house that has sat virtually untouched for over 150 years. Now, this room is real history. Claire Balding travels to Yorkshire to uncover the inspiration behind one of the world's most loved romantic novels.
To think that Charlotte Bronte came here and that from that her imagination took off. It's so exciting.
And Charlie Luxton reports on a crumbling watermill in Derbyshire that tells us about a forgotten side of the Industrial Revolution.
It's a massive, massive, massive timber wheel here.
This is a journey to the very heart of Britain's hidden heritage. Nestled in the Northamptonshire countryside lies an exceptional architectural delight, and at first sight it's distinctly un-British. Just walking through these impressive grounds, you could be forgiven for thinking we've been transported back in time to 17th century France. And if you're impressed by the exterior of this French fancy, then just wait until I show you some of the hidden treasures inside. Welcome to a magnificent Boughton House. Hidden in the middle of an 11,000-acre Northamptonshire estate, Boughton House must be one of Britain's greatest stately homes. And it's full of wonderful treasures from the 17th and 18th centuries. As you enter the house, you are greeted by paintings by the great masters, furniture of outstanding taste and quality, and extraordinary diverse collections await around every corner. Yet in spite of its obvious cultural importance, it has remained, for the most part, in obscurity. The house has been the home of the Montagu family and their descendants for almost 500 years. But it was under the ownership of Ralph, 1st Duke of Montagu, that the house we see today took its present form. Ralph Montagu was a passionate builder, patron of the arts and, most tellingly, ambassador to Louis XIV, the French king, who created the Palace of Versailles. An obvious inspiration for the continental exterior of Boughton, though the house itself is much more than just an architectural copy. In fact, Boughton is a bit of an oddity because when you enter the house for the very first time, you're struck by a series of juxtapositions. On the outside, it's most certainly French, but on the inside, with its heavy oak panelling and its wide, unassuming, understated doorways and little inner courtyards, it's most certainly English. Yet the whole place is laid out like a grand palace, but it has the intimate feel of a private home, and that's because the current Duke of Buccleuch and his family still live here. But the overriding feeling you get when you're walking around this magnificent house is the fact that you are literally stuck in time, some 300 years ago. Just walking around, you notice that the fabrics, the condition of the furniture, the artwork, the gilding, everything is in such good condition. How did it escape all the wear and tear of use?
Well, one of the things, if you come to Boughton, you'll see it, we always keep the light levels down as much as possible.
Yeah.
The house has a very interesting history. It starts off very much the creation of the 1st Duke of Montagu. And he comes back from being ambassador to Louis XIV in France and embellishes his house with wonderful French architecture, art. His son, however, was not as much interested in the house itself. His view was more the landscape, so he concentrated there. But then the house really wasn't used between about 1760 and 1920, so everything remained in the pristine condition that it is today.
Gosh. It's cocooned in time, really, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
From the surviving accounts, we know that building work was constant, the buying of artworks prolific, and the entertaining incessant. But in the 1760s, it all fell silent. The family had no sons, and the heiress daughter had married the Duke of Buccleuch and moved to Scotland. Boughton was no longer required, and for over 150 years was sealed up, tended only by a loyal staff of housekeepers. Slowly, at the beginning of the 20th century, the house began once more to be used by the family, and as they did so, the gentle process of restoration began, bringing the place back to the splendour we see today. But always Boughton is a house that is never far from its 300-year-old roots and the first Dukes of Montagu who created it and filled it with beautiful things.
This place is a real treasure house. It reads like a who's who of the greatest furniture makers and designers and painters of the 17th and 18th centuries. Now, I'm standing right here in the middle of the drawing room. Can you imagine owning one oil painting by the Baroque painter Anthony van Dyck? Well, you'd feel pretty chuffed with yourself, wouldn't you? But can you imagine owning 40 of them and having them all displayed in one room? Well, that's what I'm surrounded by right now. The great master's work, Anthony van Dyck. Absolutely incredible. Ralph Montagu bought all of these for just £3 each in 1682. And if you look really closely at them, you can see they're studies. They're intended for something else. They're all monochromatic. These were intended to be sent off to an engraver who would cut these onto a sheet of copper. So there was no need for all the colour or the busyness. He just wanted the outline, the bit of detail. And up there, there's King Charles I. Now, he was responsible for bringing Van Dyck to England. He was a great fan of his work. He made him the court painter, knighted him in 1632, gave him a pension, £200 a year. That's how highly regarded he was. Now, this room is real history.
One of the many extraordinary advantages of this house being virtually sealed up for 150 years is that very little was ever thrown away. And the Montagus and their successors, the Dukes of Buccleuch, were scrupulous at keeping paperwork and records of just about everything. Boxload after boxload of letters and documents have been kept in storage, leaving us an invaluable archive of daily life in the 1700s.
There's a lot of material here, and this is just a very small part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, this is just my workroom where I bring the papers and the archives up to look at and to scope and see what's in them.
Scope, I like that word. Scoping.
Scoping, yes.
You are the social history detective, really, aren't you, in a way?
Well, he's the keeper of the family records, and to see what's there and see what we can determine from it.
Gareth's studies really reveal what life would have been like throughout the years at Boughton, including some surprising revelations about one unusual resident.
The second Duke, Duke John, who was known as John the Planter, had a reputation of being very kind to animals. And there's always been a story in the house that he had a lion, a pet lion, that was regarded... we never believed it, we all thought it was a myth and legend. And the myth was even worse than that. It was a toothless lion, it was lost all its teeth. We know that John was the keeper of the ordnance and hence responsible for the Tower of London at this period, where there was the menagerie, the Royal Menagerie. So, again, the myth and legend was that he brought one of the old lions to stay at the house here. And what we have here is, this is again 1745, lion must never be locked up at all, but to go where he will, except into the garden, where he must not go for fear he should be drowned.
Wow, he really did exist.
Yeah, he must be free of the old pantry, to be fed there, to have boiled meat, no horse flesh, nor bones given him, which again intimates he probably was toothless.
Yes.
To lie every night in his house in the old pantry and to have his trough filled every morning with fresh water.
Wow.
And to have
Can you imagine a lion
fresh
roaming
runners.
around the ground?
I mean, in 1745, you know, Lions of Longleat, we were there first.
The owners of Boughton might have been scrupulous about recording its history, but with other old country houses, it's not always the same story. Claire Balding has been to Yorkshire to unearth clues about the inspiration behind one of Britain's greatest Gothic novels.
This is one of my favourite novels, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I first read it as a teenager, and there's something about this book that stays with you forever. It's been translated into 43 different languages. It's sold millions of copies all over the world. It's particularly popular in Japan and in China. There has always, though, been a certain mystery about the basis for the characters and the emotive settings in the book. But we're going to try and uncover some of that mystery, because I've come today to a country house in North Yorkshire that has secrets behind hidden panels. Much of the action in Bronte's Jane Eyre takes place at the fictitious Thornfield Hall, home to Jane's love interest, Edward Rochester. Employed as governess at Thornfield, Jane also meets Rochester's deranged wife, hidden away in a locked attic. But where would Charlotte Bronte have found the inspiration for the violent and insane wife of Mr. Rochester locked in the attic? Could it be possible that that place and that person were based on reality? Could Thornfield Hall have been based on this house? This Gothic mansion is Norton Conyers Hall, the ancestral home of the Graham family. Built in the 17th century on top of an existing medieval hall, the gardens are a popular local attraction. What the visiting public probably don't know is that the Graham family legend has it that this place was the inspiration for Thornfield Hall as described in Jane Eyre. It's well documented that in the summer of 1839, Charlotte Bronte lived not far away in Lothersdale, employed as governess to 2 young children of the wealthy Sidgwick family. And the Grahams believe that during her time in the area, Charlotte visited Norton Conyers.
We think it was probably a family day trip, and the children would have come as well, which is why she came to look after the children.
And what do you think she would have made of it?
I think she would have been enchanted by the ancient atmosphere, and she would have found inspiration here because there's a tremendous atmosphere.
In the Victorian era, it would have been common for well-to-do families to pay informal, unannounced trips to neighbouring country estates.
It was very popular at that time, if you had a carriage and were dressed respectably, to come and visit houses such as Norton Conyers.
We're not talking about an invitation from the owner of the house to say, oh, come round and have a look. They would just have turned up?
Yes, especially because the 7th Baronet, who owned
My great-great-grandfather,
who owned the house at the time, was very often away, and so the servants would be in charge of the house, and it would have been a very nice break in their day to be able to show a visitor around.
So we know that Charlotte Bronte worked for a time nearby, and we know that well-to-do families like her employers would have made regular house calls to other local country homes. But could there be any truth to the Grahams' claim? Well, I am officially intrigued, but like any good investigative reporter, I need more clues to prove that this could have been the inspiration for Thornfield Hall. So we have to go to the text itself. And here, the passage on Jane Eyre's first approach. We now slowly ascended a drive and came upon the long front of a house. Candlelight gleamed from one curtained bow window. All the rest were dark. Could be here, but we need more. We need more from the text, we need more about the house, and we need more about Charlotte Bronte herself. inside and it becomes clear that there are many passages in Jane Eyre that seem to describe Norton Conyers. For example, the steps and banisters were of oak. The staircase was high and latticed. Both it and the long gallery into which the bedroom doors opened looked as if they belonged to a church rather than a house. Now, it's easy to imagine this place being Thornfield Hall when you read those passages from Jane Eyre, but we're after concrete evidence, and we've got some. Now, Norton Conyers isn't the only house claimed to be the inspiration for Thornfield. There is a theory that a house called the Ridings, home to Bronte's lifelong friend Ellen Nussey, could also be a contender. But someone who certainly didn't subscribe to that theory was James Graham's great-grandfather, Reginald.
There is this letter here, which is written by Reginald Graham, 1888, to Erskine Stewart, who was a Bronte scholar who was very interested in for his book. And Erskine Stewart sent Graham a photograph of the Ridings, and he says, I observe the picture represents the Ridings as of 2 stories only, whereas the book describes Thornfield as being distinctly of 3 stories. In my mind, there's strong evidence that Norton Conyers was far more likely to be the scene for Jane Eyre than the Ridings.
There was a fair amount of competition, wasn't there? Still is, between various country houses saying, you know, that we claim we're the basis for Thornfield
Yes,
Hall.
and that's what this is all about. They're saying there are more reasons why Norton Conyers is Thornfield than any other house.
The 3rd floor of Thornfield is an important aspect of Jane Eyre. In the book, it was here in the attic that Mr. Rochester kept his insane wife locked up. The fact that Norton Conyers also has 3 levels is a crucial piece of evidence. And in 2004, a startling discovery was made that further supports the Grahams' claims.
A good run of apparently solid panelling from the Edwardian period, and there's a new door put in to give access to a staircase which was previously unknown. There were once good service stairs, but then in alterations they're not needed and they're panelled over.
This previously hidden staircase is similar to one referred to in Jane Eyre as a route used by Rochester to visit his wife on the 3rd floor. This is extraordinary.
Here's the corridor linking all the servants' bedrooms. So this is which would only be really occupied from last thing at night until first thing in the morning.
Although this floor bears a striking resemblance to that portrayed in Jane Eyre, one room in particular shares a dark secret incredibly similar to the attic of Thornfield. It's well documented in the Graham archives that in the 18th century, well before Charlotte Bronte would have visited, a mysterious woman was kept locked up in this tiny room at the far end of the attics of Norton Conyers.
She was known as Mad Mary. We don't know who she was. We don't know if she was a servant or whether she was a member of the family. A mental illness was not well understood at that time. Anybody who was considered mad was hidden from view and forgotten about.
Family legend has it that Mad Mary was kept under lock and key, secreted away in the tiny attic room. And the Grahams believe that this was the inspiration for the character of Mr. Rochester's deranged wife. So this room and the woman who was kept in this room was the inspiration for one of the greatest Gothic romance novels ever written.
That's right. It's somewhere where that person can be kept quiet and serviced by the appropriate servants.
It makes me feel terribly sad being in here because it feels so much like a cell. I mean, it's very small, and compared to some of the other rooms in the house, it's tiny. And you've just got one little glimpse of an outside world that you would never be allowed into. We'll never know for sure if Bronte came here or based elements of Jane Eyre on what she saw and heard. But one thing's for certain, all Bronte fans, like myself, feel drawn to try and understand this most captivating of romantic novels. And maybe it's a limitation in us that we're seeking to find the proof, the real thing. What was it based on?
Obviously, a novel is a work of the imagination, and this is an amalgamation of various houses that Charlotte knew. I think we really shouldn't be trying to pin it down, but I think it's there's definitely a sense of Thornfield in this house. I think you just have to come here and see it, and you feel that.
At Boughton House, my tour of this incredible sleeping beauty has taken me outside to the magnificent gardens, where a huge amount of work is taking place. The 150 years of neglect in the 18th and 19th centuries has meant that much of the original gardens has disappeared or grown over. Originally, there would have been avenues of lime trees, formal gardens and a unique set of waterways. The current Duke, Richard, has plans to restore much of the garden to its former glory, in particular the water features which would have once been integral to the landscaping of the house. I met up with the Duke and his landscape manager to find out how the restoration is going so far.
What are we looking at here?
Well, we're looking at a bird's eye view by possibly a famous landscape gardener called Bridgman in about 1725, 1726, and you can see the immense scale of the Broughton landscape at that time, dominated really by this water structure, a large lake in front of the west front of the house. And its great value for the house was that a visitor arriving from this side would see this magnificent, very French-style north front reflected in the water.
Oh,
it would have been
beautiful.
very, very
How
beautiful.
beautiful.
In essence, we are peeling away the layers that have accumulated over the centuries without there being water in here. I reckon that if you come back in 3 or maybe 4 years' time, this may be transformed.
Restoring the stunning system of canals around the house is a labour of love for Duke Richard. Work on the north front has yet to start, but to the west of the house, Phase 1 has been completed and gives a wonderful feel of what it would have once been like here.
You see how important water was to the enjoyment of the house.
You can.
A lake like this would have been much used. I suspect there would have been fish in it, would have been a larder for the house.
And the future?
I think the future is an exciting one. I think that this recovery of the landscape is really terribly important for the next generation. It's not something to be afraid of, but something to be enjoyed.
The restoration of the gardens and the wider estate is a 30-year project. But of course, with a house as old as Boughton, it's not just the gardens that are in need of maintenance. The house itself is under constant review, understandably, with so many treasures, all of which have a story.
There are some fabulous antiques and artefacts here in this house. And the lovely thing about it is, the things that are meant to have wear do have wear. They have been used, like the seat cushions. But other things are still in perfect condition. No damage at all, like this fabulous pair of Meissen swans made by the Meissen factory in 1750, commissioned for Madame de Pompadour, who was the mistress of Louis XV. And mistresses were considered quite important at the time. You had to listen to them, more important than the wife. The base is made up of spelter. It's a mixed metal fused together, but I like this naturalistic bulrush around it. this wonderful scroll work. It makes the swan sort of feel more important. It's almost as if it's on a crown rather than a nest of reeds. Now, the interesting story about the history of this is, while the French aristocracy were losing their heads on the guillotine during the time of the French Revolution, they were also losing their houses, all of their treasures and items of furniture. And the English aristocracy were sending agents over there to buy it up on the cheap and bring it back over here, including the Duke of Buccleuch.
The astonishing collection of antiques and furniture in the house is wide-ranging, from the surprising and sometimes unusual pieces like these flame-stitched sofas and chairs dating to the William and Mary period to the Boughton state bed. This great bed has had over 6,000 man-hours spent conserving it to its current condition, ostrich feathers and all. It reminds us of just how flamboyant these rooms would have been in their heyday in the 17th and 18th centuries. However, there's one collection of furniture that has really caught my eye, and it's the work by 18th century French cabinet maker André Charles Boulle. His work is distinctive with its intricate brass fretwork inlaid with wood, tortoiseshell, pewter or mother of pearl. I met up once more with Gareth, who was keen to show me Boughton's prize piece and perhaps one of the greatest examples of Boulle work.
Gosh, that is one of the best examples I think I've ever seen.
It is magnificent, isn't it?
This is all tortoiseshell, isn't it?
This is all tortoiseshell with the blue and the red as well, with inlaid brass. Because, as you know, the problem with Boulle, that you have the different media, the tortoiseshell and the brass in this case, and of course the heat and the glue even that they use shrinks at different rates. Yeah. And as the small pieces ping out, as they expand and contract, then of course just simple dusting or people walking past can fall them to bend. It's a very unusual piece. Got to. And of course this is what is not regularly seen, not only by visiting public, but as a piece of furniture you wouldn't normally leave it open.
Do you know, I can't see anything wrong with it. I couldn't tell you what's been restored and what hasn't. It's that good, isn't it?
Repairs are currently taking place on another piece of Boulle work from Boughton. It's being carried out by Yannick Chastongue, one of the very few craftsmen in the world who are able to still do this kind of intricate fretwork. To restore marquetry like the work of Boulle requires a steady hand and a very sharp fret saw. Sandwiching the thin metal between two slices of plywood to prevent the metal from bending. And working in the most minute detail, as the work of Boulle is not only rare, but as you can imagine, incredibly valuable. When fully restored, this desk will be a sight to see.
Do you know, we are so lucky that houses like Boughton have survived over the years intact, because it gives us a fascinating insight into the social history of the upper echelons of society back in the 18th century. But when it comes to our industrial heritage, we're not always that keen to preserve it for future generations. Charlie Luxton has been to the Derbyshire Dales to check out what was one of the last vestiges of an almost forgotten side of the Industrial Revolution.
I have to say, this really is one of the most beautiful parts of Britain, and these woods just outside Matlock are especially magical. And today it's hard to believe that 200 years ago this landscape would have looked completely different. Because believe it or not, this is where the Industrial Revolution really got going.
The Matlock Valley is world-renowned as a birthplace of the Industrial Revolution.
It was here in 1775 that the great industrialist Sir Richard Arkwright built his cotton milling empire. By using the ancient technology of the water wheel to power his newly invented cotton spinning machines, Arkwright not only revolutionised the cotton trade, he virtually invented the modern factory and with it, the mass production process. His machine was called the water frame, and it made Arkwright a very, very rich man. But there is a hidden side to this story, one of industrial espionage. Because just 1 mile from Arkwright's mill, a group of 18th century venture capitalists moved into a secluded valley and set up their own copycat version of Arkwright's mill. Until recently, these mills were overgrown, forgotten, and neglected. I want to find out who built these mysterious cotton mills and what role they had in Britain's Industrial Revolution.
So, Julian, what is this building?
This was originally a cotton spinning mill.
OK, and when was it built?
It was built very, very early, 1785.
Who actually built it?
They were a company called Watts Low and Company, venture capitalists, if you like.
So they were people being drawn to the area, into this kind of pot of gold that was being sort of created?
I think it was exactly that in the very early days. And it was a water-driven spinning process.
So the Watts and Low Company were muscling in on Arkwright's business, and they had a secret weapon, Mr. Low himself.
We think he probably worked for Arkwright. He certainly had knowledge of Arkwright's methods.
So he did the dirty?
He did the dirty, yes. He wanted a slice of the action himself.
Buoyed by their insider knowledge, these entrepreneurs set about building their empire right under Arkwright's nose. However, they had a problem. Arkwright's inventions were all securely patented. But like all successful entrepreneurs, they took a risk.
The people who built this mill, Watts Low and Company, gambled on the fact that Arkwright was going to lose his patent rights and went ahead and built this mill.
So they were working on the premise that he would lose the protection he had over his process.
Yeah.
And they built all of this in the hope that he would.
Exactly.
Industrial espionage, insider trading, and a breach of patent. It's fair to say that if this were today's corporate climate, Watts and Low could expect a call from Arkwright's lawyers. But in the 18th century, Watts and Low felt secure in their hidden valley and gambled their futures by building their very own version of Arkwright's water frame.
So this is kind of the heart of
That is the wheel
machine.
pit from the water wheel, yeah.
Oh, lovely. So is this how deep it would have been originally?
No, it would have been much deeper than that. Your shoulders are at the level of the axle. It would have been another 12 foot deep.
12 foot?
12 foot, yeah.
So massive, massive, massive timber metal wheel.
Yeah,
here.
massive wheel, yeah.
With their Arkwright-inspired mill, Watts and Low were in business. Using the waterfall as a power source and 200 people to work it, they ignored Arkwright's patent and set up shop.
And how much of a copy is this from Arkwright's original?
Well, I'm guessing, but I suspect it was very close. I suspect it was actually a rip-off of Arkwright's machinery. It would have been industrial espionage, for want of a better word, that the local knowledge of these machines would have been worth a lot of money to the financial people.
It's a bit cheeky, isn't it?
It is a bit cheeky.
Watts and Low were saving themselves a huge amount of money by cutting Arkwright out of the loop. Leasing the rights to his water frame could cost up to £5,000 per annum, an extraordinary sum in the 18th century. In 1785, Richard Arkwright went to court to extend his patents once more, but this time the Crown was less amenable. Arkwright had a fight on his hands.
The arguments were that there were 10 processes in what he had brought forward with his water frame, And they could show that several of these, at least 7 of them, had been there before and were not new to him. I think the second problem was that he hadn't specified clearly what his patent was. So therefore, he could be more or less claiming anybody who was doing anything which was to do with powered spinning was infringing his patent.
Arkwright's machine involved 3 sets of paired rollers that turned at different speeds, pulling and stretching the raw cotton. While these rollers produced yarn of the correct thickness, a set of spindles twisted the fibres firmly together. The various processes involved many bits of machinery that had already been invented by others. Arkwright's genius was to put them all together for the first time, but claiming them all as his was a different matter.
So I think probably it would be fair to say greed with his patents. He managed to line up just about everybody else against him. And of course they go to court. And I think at the end, the prosecuting counsel pointed to him and said, "There stands the thief."
Arkwright finally lost the patent for his water frame in a landmark case in June 1785. His famous invention was now public property.
It then opened the gates to anyone to do this type of thing, and the state wanted this. They felt that he was blocking it, his patent was unreasonable, and he was really trying to stop the development of cotton spinning generally.
He gets it all going, but he's holding it back, and the moment that his grip on this industrial process is loosened,
that helps it. So that helps it a lot.
The Industrial Revolution was now underway. By 1788, water-driven mills started springing up all over Britain. And for Watts and Lowe in the Lumsdale Valley, trade blossomed. For 30 years, they spun cotton, using the water frame design free of the worry of being sued. But in 1813, their luck ran out and the company went bankrupt. Their water-powered mill finally met an opponent it couldn't beat: steam.
It is quite incredible to think what this place was like in the late 18th, early 19th century. There would have been, 5 of these water wheels tumbling down this valley. I imagine there was no vegetation, no trees or plants. It would have been dirty, crowded, incredibly dangerous. And look at it now. Time is an incredible healer. I do know that this place didn't change the world like Cromford. I mean, that is where modern industrial process was born. But the revolution, now that really did take place here.
At Boughton House, my tour continues. There's so much to take in, from the rare and beautifully preserved French tapestries that hang in the staterooms, to the wonderful limewood staircase that would have once clattered with the footsteps of the staff who served this grand building. This place is a time capsule on a monumental scale.
One of the marvellous things about Boughton House being stood unused for many years is the fact that it gives us a wonderful insight into how the occupants lived here and went about their day-to-day running of the place. Aspects of it that we wouldn't normally think about in a big country house. Now, they obviously had concerns about fire, especially being in the middle of nowhere. And the first Duke would have been 28 years old when the Great Fire of London in 1666 ravaged and destroyed the city. He would have seen that firsthand. He would have been concerned. Shortly after that, the first fire service was formed. So what we have here is one of the world's very first fire engines, designed by Londoner Richard Newson in 1718. And the idea was this hand-pulled cart would literally be pulled to where the fire was, to the action. It would have been filled full of water in this chamber here, dragged up. These hoses would have been attached to this end here and then pointed at the flames. Then you'd have had 4 chaps, burly, strong chaps, to a side, holding onto these bars and pumping like crazy to jettison the water out in that direction. And when the chambers were running low, they would have been refilled by members of the staff, forming a line down to the pond or the lake, each with a leather bucket, passing it to the other one to refill these chambers. And I've just noticed, actually, I'm pleased the current Duke is also still concerned about fire issues. Look at that, we have a fire extinguisher there.
It's hardly surprising that successive dukes have wanted to protect this incredible building, which is as impressive as it is huge. Wing after wing, constructed of local Weldon stone, with nearly 2 acres of Collie Western slate covering the French-style mansard roofs. Boughton is a wonderful fusion of French and English architecture, and there's one part of the building that gives a unique insight into how the place would have been constructed. An unfinished wing where the builders downed tools over 300 years ago, leaving us a 3D blueprint of a 17th century stately home.
Gosh, look at that.
Fantastic, isn't it?
Oh, it's just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. The bare fabric of the walls, the history these walls contained. Wow. Why was this never finished off?
Well, it's quite an interesting story, actually. It should have been the Duchess's quarters, but she never actually lived here. So she actually lived in a completely different house. This was never needed, so it got to this point and was completely stopped. So it's paused in history and time, really.
And there's another floor above there, isn't there?
Exactly, yes. It should have been a floor above us here, and then above there were actually rooms that were completed, servants' rooms, storerooms, etc. So all that was actually needed, whereas this part wasn't needed at all.
I hope that door's firmly bolted from the other side.
Oh, yes, very much firmly locked, yes. That leads up into the state apartments, but it's kept very firmly locked.
And there's a good example of the lead work. The drain pipes on the inside, built in.
That's right. Otherwise, you spoil the outside lines, and it's very important to have this architectural feature of the outside. So put them inside, hide them away.
I mean, we don't do that nowadays.
Well, they're all brilliant until, of course, they leak.
Well, yes. Yes.
As my time at Boughton draws to a close, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of the wealth of history this house contains. And I have perhaps left the most important treasure till last, the music archive. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, Lady Elizabeth Montagu was an obsessive collector of music scores. Most of it has been boxed up and not seen for centuries. Music historian Paul Boucher is one of the team that has the enormous task of archiving the collection and has already unearthed some extraordinary musical finds.
Hi. Sorry to disturb your peace.
No. You're very welcome. I was just looking at this very ancient instruction book on how to play the lute.
Oh, lovely. What does this date to, this book?
1596.
Gosh. Did the dukes all play and entertain people and give recitals in the Great Hall?
Well, we're finding that out. We're piecing the history together with a lot of careful research. But yeah, they were a very, very musical family, and the first duke had been ambassador to Louis XIV at Versailles.
So he was open to all the operas.
Absolutely, and the dance and the whole French culture, and he imported that back with him.
What's the biggest treasure you've come across here amongst the manuscript?
I think probably historically the most important is this innocent little volume, and it's in fact the first piece of music ever to be printed in this country.
What does this date back to?
1570. This is written for 4 voices to be sung without any accompaniment.
Oh, right.
By Lassus. And it's unique in the world. The only surviving copy of it. It has been used. You can see it's been written on.
Where did you find this one?
This was on a shelf in what's called the North Passage.
That's remarkable. That's absolutely remarkable.
It's a huge treasure. I hardly dare touch it. So that, I think, is possibly the greatest treasure.
But of course, studying the sheet music is one thing, listening to it is a whole different experience. And whenever Paul feels an important piece of music has come to light, he arranges for it to be played. Today, local harpsichordist Alex is going to play an arrangement of a very famous piece of music that has not been heard for over 200 years. He's playing. Let's go and find out. What's this piece called?
Well, this is the fireworks music
by
Handel. And there's this wonderful association, of course, with the second Duke, who commissioned the fireworks music, and it acted as go-between between Handel, the composer, and the king, who was very keen on having a lot of military instruments, and Handel was much more interested in having something much more refined and something which also could live on as a piece afterwards.
It's wonderful to think that this is how Handel would have been playing this.
Yeah, well, it's as near as we can probably get.
The sound is perfect. It's bringing those manuscripts to life, and that's the important thing.
Yes, exactly. That's the whole point of it. Otherwise, they're just dots on pages.
Lovely, absolutely lovely. What's it like playing a piece of Handel's music on this harpsichord?
It's very beautiful, and it's very lovely to play, and especially the privilege of being here to play from this score, which has sort of lain hidden for I don't know how long. Just to be able to open this and see the sorts of trends actually that were prevalent at the time in terms of home entertainment, I suppose.
It seems only appropriate to leave Boughton to the sound of music echoing around this extraordinary house, as it would have done over 250 years ago.
This country has a wealth of heritage. It is all around us. And more often than not, the deeper you dig, the more rewarding the treasure is. And with thousands of years of history under our belts, there's no end to the surprises that await us. See you soon.